So I actually once again forgot which episode this is. I think maybe we're on 7 of season 2. But welcome everybody. I know there's a lot of new people on here today. So typically I start off with just going around asking people a question, just a little bit of icebreaker so we can get to know each other. If you'd like me to skip you and you're having your lunch or just want to keep your camera off and just listen, that's totally fine. Pop it in the chat and then I'll skip past you. I know that Women's Day is coming up on the 8th of March, and one of our channels in the Happiness and Humans community is dedicated to equality, and so I've been kind of posting in there just to get ideas of what people are doing to recognize this day in their organizations and in their own life. So I thought I would kind of go around and asking people if there's any special woman that you know about throughout history that you really admire. I know this is kind of a big question on the spot, but I think I'll start off with Caroline. Is there some woman that you'd like to recognize on International Women's Day? And if there's any kind of ideas that you have about celebrating this day, feel free to share.
That's a big question, Rosie.
I know.
I'd have to say my mum. Who's very inspirational to me. And then I'd say Ella Fitzgerald, a very pioneering musician, but in terms of what she went through with segregation at the time.
Definitely.
So yeah.
That's a good one. Thanks, Caroline. Victoria. I'm putting people on the spot.
I know, yeah. It's my first time.
Just getting ideas out. I mean, if you want to think about it, totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, again, my mum is number one. There's no doubt. She's just amazing, and I'm inspired by sort of so many women. Obviously, they've got the standard ones that are that everyone would say, but I'm just sort of just each and every day. It's just people that I speak to, and there's just so many sort of inspiring women that I come across every day. So I wouldn't even be able to just say one, I think, but obviously mum's number one.
Absolutely. I think, and I was thinking of maybe doing in our organization, doing a kind of video of us saying one person that we really admire throughout history and like who's made big achievements in cultural or political space. So Jenny, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. So I suppose there's a couple recently, just through things I've watched. I watched something about Victorian Britain. I have a bit of a weird obsession with watching things about the past. So like the Emmeline Pankhurst for the suffragettes.
Okay.
And then I also watched a movie called Radioactive about Marie Curie, which was also really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, yeah, those two sort of come to mind. And then obviously family, my mum.
Perfect. Good ones. Mark Thompson, how about you? Oh, I think it's frozen.
Can you hear me?
Yep, no, I can.
I mean, I'm a man and we're generally quite rubbish. So all women inspire me because they keep us in check in life, in work, and the universe. We only have to look at I don't know her name, the president of New Zealand, to show how it can actually be done, as well as being a working mum. So I'm putting it out to all.
That's a good one. Very good. Thanks, Mark. Jenny Workman, how about you?
Hey Rosie, hey everybody, happy anniversary, Rosie. 2 years.
Thank you.
Goodness, what questions put on the spot. I'm sure you've probably all seen the film Hidden Figures relatively recently, but that was one of those films that I really enjoyed, not just for bringing into a sort of spotlight Katherine Johnson and Dorothy Vaughan, but it was actually as well Kevin Costner's character Al Harrison as well, because I think not only were those women incredible, but it was amazing to see the first time a man used his privilege to help women, and not only that, women of colour at that point. So it's about recognising not just women in history, I think, but equally people who've supported them. So I think it's important to recognise everybody. And then really randomly, my great aunt, because she drove ambulances through the Second World War, And I don't know if any of you spotted, there's a brilliant programme from Lucy Worsley, historian, on the BBC the other night about Blitz Britain and Blitz Spirit. It's a really good debunker of some myths, and actually talks about fake news and stuff like that and how it was going on through that. So highly recommend that as a watch for debunking a few myths, and also again celebrating women and achievements.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jenny. Matt, I'll go next to you because you've got your screen on. Or is he feeling?
I wrote down 6, but I obviously only talk about one. On my short list, I had my mum, proper entrepreneur, left Ireland at 16 years old to move to New York because her family couldn't afford to support her, so she had to support herself. I've got Victoria Beckham on there, which might not be what people are expecting, but I know some people that have worked with her, and it's a different tale to what the press tell you. I've got Caroline O'Keefe on here for putting up with me and Mark on a daily basis. But the one I wanted to really highlight was Dame Shirley, and I will share her TED talk in here. But she's called Dame Shirley Steve because her background, just really quickly, she came over on the Kinder Transport, which is a story that's personal to me for many reasons. But she's basically set up an IT company which became this multi-million-pound company, and it was so successful that when she sold that company, most of her management team, over 50 of them, became millionaires. And one of the facts about it is that everyone worked from home, and it was all female employees, which actually the company became legal when the equal rights law came in for employment, and she had to hire men for the first time. So all I would say is check out her TED talk. And I think the most interesting thing in the TED talk is at some point she talks about how we think about like women's rights and equals rights is just this totally like getting better all the time type curve. But her point is that each generation has to refight for all rights, because it's not like a curve that goes like that. It's backwards and forwards. And for those that know that when we've been doing events, in Saudi Arabia where the women got the right to drive cars recently, the woman who led that campaign has just spent the last 1,000 days or so in jail, and just recently been released. So we think of everything from a UK perspective, don't we? But there's a lot to be done around the world. So I'll post in here the YouTube video to Dame Shirley. It's my favourite YouTube video.
Yeah, please do, Matt. Thank you. Joe, you're up next.
Don't really know how to follow that, but definitely, obviously, my mum. But in terms of sort of the wider world, probably Serena Williams. I think she's just massively inspiring. It's really weird because I still think of myself as a new mum, but actually my son's 2 now. But I think it's because like in lockdown, it feels like nothing's really changed. So like life's just stayed the same. But I think she's incredible, especially coming back after she's had her kids, and she just keeps fighting and fighting and fighting. And I'm so sure that she's going to get another Grand Slam.
Amazing. That's a good one. Thank you, Joe. Everybody else has their cameras off, so I'm just going to skip past you unless you would like me to go to you. I will go on to Gareth. Who would you like to recognize for International Women's Day?
It's funny actually because a number of the ones I would go to naturally have been taken. So certainly Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand now would be a big hero. It's just impossible not to admire how she goes about doing what she does. Marie Curie, it's astonishing to think she wasn't allowed to go to university in Poland because women weren't allowed to go to university. And she was just one of the most brilliant scientific minds of all time. She ended up having to do her craft in Paris. She got embroiled in a relationship with another physicist. He was married. She took the public blame for it, even though, he was in on it. Mm. And despite all of that, she's just, her legacy is just astonishing. So, so she's pretty cool. Maybe Amelia Earhart, just reckless kind of risk taker.
Yeah.
And maybe to balance that up, I have a desperate soft spot for Andrea Merkel or Angela Merkel. I just think she's a tough survivor in a very different. If you can kind of lead Germany, hold the EU together, take Donald Trump's barbs and kind of deal with them, and come out the far side. You've got something going for you. So I kind of have a curious respect for her as well.
Amazing.
Gareth, before we go into the content of today, a personal question: do you, as a father of a daughter, has it changed your leadership style of someone leading a business? Has seeing your daughter grow up influenced you in your leadership style at work at all? I know I'm going a bit off script here, Rosie, but I'm just interested.
No worries.
Well, she's an adult, you know, so she's 18. So I suppose it's difficult to see her. It's funny. Was it Joe who mentioned that she doesn't feel like a new mum anymore? Believe me, you really are. But I suppose I'm very so she's called Zoe. She's been working for about a year now, and she brings me home her stories of. She works at a local kind of petrol station, so she brings me home all her stories of all that's going on in work, and it has certainly helped me see what the working world looks like from the perspective of someone who's in a different position within it than I am, you know, and I hope that's made me more empathetic. I think too the challenges of balancing work life and home life when your kids are young, you know, our kids are up now, but when they're young, I think that hopefully helps you become a bit more sensitive as well, and helps you realize just what a balancing act it is for so many families. So I think those are the main ways, Matt. I'm sure, or I hope there are other ways that maybe I haven't noticed but others have, but those would be the main ways. Yeah.
No, thanks, Gareth.
We have one last person who'd like to share. Tito, nice to see you again.
Oh, hi Rosie, hi everyone. Sorry, I'm like flicking my camera off and off.
No worries.
But I think for me, an inspiring woman is Vernee Myers. If you've ever heard the soundbite, diversity has been invited to the party, inclusion has been asked to dance. She's the one who said that, and she's the leader of inclusion and belonging at Netflix. And I don't know if any of you have seen their D&I report, which was just an incredible show of strength, vulnerability, and just creativity. And I think it's probably one of the best I've seen, including the video as well, which just makes it super interactive and dynamic. And all the work that she, and I'm sure a lot of other people at Netflix have done to increase representation, both in front of the screens, but also internally at Netflix as well. So for me, that makes her super awe-inspiring.
That's amazing. Would you mind sharing that in the community, Tito, if you don't mind? I'd love to look into that more. I haven't actually had a chance to read it.
I've just found it, Rosie. I've just found it. I'll just share it on here.
Okay, cool. Great. Thank you. Yeah, so if anybody has any ideas of what they're doing in their organizations to kind of recognize Women's Day on the 8th of March, please feel free to share in our community. I'd love to hear some ideas as well for myself. But we'll get into it. So Gareth, thank you for joining at Happiness in Humans today. I know we've got a lot to talk about how you have had an amazing perspective on the parallels between UX, which is what you specialize in, but also translating that to employee experience. So could you just start off with sharing with us a little background on yourself and what you do and what makes you happy in your career?
No problem. Rosie, and thank you so much for the invitation to come and to share with you today. So I suppose for the best part of a quarter of a century, I have made my living from digital design. I started off life as a programmer. In my first job, through a series of coincidences, I found myself working on Ireland's first online personal banking project back in the autumn of 1996. My word, that's a long time ago. But that launched in January 1997, and that got me hooked on the internet. That was me. You know, I just thought this was an amazing thing. I didn't realize back then just how mainstream and ubiquitous it would come, but certainly I knew that the wagons were heading west in the gold rush, and I wanted to go with them. So I moved home to Belfast from Dublin in the summer of 97 to join a small web design agency. There were 4 people when I joined. I joined on a 6-month contract. It took me 13 years to escape, and the business grew to 55 people. And I led it for 8 years, from 2002 to the end of 2009. And we sold the business towards the end of that period. So that got me, I just got completely fascinated by the psychology of design. And I got really interested in the simple concept of design performance, that you could look at 2 designs and you could determine that one was objectively better than the other, not because it was prettier, because it was nicer, because you preferred it. It just performed better than the other. So when I finished up there, I founded a user experience design agency in 2011 in September, and we celebrate our 10th birthday in September of this year, which is hard to believe.
That's exciting.
The business is still relatively small. There's 12 of us, and we look after digital design needs for businesses large and small all over Ireland and GB. So that's been the day job, Rosie. I've invested in a few businesses, sit in a few boards, but those are the main day jobs so far.
And with Reddit tricks along the side of that as well, which I'm looking forward to seeing one at the end, right?
From time to time, Rosie. Yeah, on request. Yeah.
So I know, like, I am very new to the concept of UX, and I don't know if many people on this call are familiar with it either, but could you just explain to us kind of the basic principles and methodologies behind user experience?
No problem. So user experience is a subset of a discipline called experience design. And what UX and experience design believe is that at its heart, how something is designed is how it makes you feel. So experience design or user experience is how an interface, a service, a product makes you feel. So when you check in at a hotel, that service will elicit a feeling in you. When you use an app, you will feel an emotion. When you turn on your car radio, you will feel an emotion. When you use your toaster, you will feel an emotion when you use a website. So experience design is a simple idea that we can actually design emotion. If we design in a certain way, we can be confident that we have designed a car, a hotel check-in, an app, a website, that we can design it in such a way that it elicits the most positive possible emotions. And it's not a kind of a trivial or pedantic comment. It gets to the heart of what design is. And the philosophical kind of mind test that I always run in this is just to ask, has anyone in this call been on a website or an app recently that's caused them to feel angry? And usually when I ask that question, nearly everybody says, yeah, I was on this site, I was trying to do this thing and it couldn't do it and it got me really annoyed or frustrated. So designing emotion is important. We got to be careful that we think about the emotions of the people who we are responsible for designing for. And the promise of UX, the promise of experience design, is that if we design in the right way, we can feel really confident that by the time our users are using our websites or our apps, that they will feel really confident and empowered and positive. And we always say in UX that the opposite of our users feeling angry and stupid isn't our users being delighted and opening the champagne. We wish it was, but the opposite of anger and stupidity is loyalty. And what we see is that users are loyal to the products that make them feel good, that help them get stuff done. So experience design is all about designing emotion and making sure that the experiences we give our users on our digital products are positive.
Gareth, can I just ask a question on that?
Sure.
You're the first person ever that I've ever, and coming from a digital background myself, that's really talked about the importance of emotions in a website design. Where is that coming from?
Well, it's a user experience. The theory of user experience piggybacks a little bit on the design of luxury experiences. So the first kind of industry category to start to think in this way were luxury designers. So if you work for Prada or you work for Gucci or you work for Mercedes or BMW, you need to persuade your customers to pay double, treble, 10 times for your product and equivalent other product. So they realized a long time ago that if you're going to do that, you need to make an emotional connection with your customer. It's not a purely rational connection. And so they thought about how that could be broken down. And they broke design into three lenses. Functional design, which is how it works, visual design, which is how it looks, but experience design, which is how it feels. And they just saw this experience design piece as a differentiator, and they saw it as something that was just lacking in design, and so that's where they picked it up. But if you want to really find out its roots actually come from a century ago in the Bauhaus art house of Germany in the 1910s and 1920s, which was just this collection of crazy geniuses, if you like, who brought different design disciplines together, and experience design was in the mix as long ago as 100 years.
And Gareth, sorry to be completely uncouth, is that a group of people, or is that a museum that can be visited? What when you said Bauhaus?
It is at the time it was a movement. It was a university of liberals who so they're credited, for instance, with inventing graphic design. So they were the first organization to say, do you know what, we've got this discipline called typography, we've got this discipline of photography, why don't we put words over photographs to make posters? And they're credited with that. And they're, for those of you of a certain age, you might remember Top of the Pops, the intro in the 1980s, that was all Bauhaus shapes. So Bauhaus furniture and shapes and design are very, if you Google it, you'll see lots of things that you're probably more familiar with than you maybe thought.
And I'm just thinking of a selfish trip here. Is that the sort of thing? Could we go to Germany and sort of as a group, as Happiness and Humans? Could we all go with you and Rosie leading us there?
We could, of course. I think there's a very good nightclub there, Matthew. But
brilliant.
There's a museum and there's a whole thing there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry for interrupting. It's so fascinating. Thanks, Gareth.
No problem, Matt. Bauhaus is actually a name of a goth punk band from the 80s too, I believe. Just picked up on that. Okay. Check them out.
Very good.
Anyways, moving on. I know there's a lot of words you use in there, and Matt picked up on the emotions especially. How can we link those methodologies and those principles of those 3 points that you made about user experience to employee experience? I know there's one that you've shared with me before about kind of, from starter through to exit experience of an employee. Could you share with us how you translate those parallels?
Yeah, no problem. I think the best way to start it, Rosie, is to I'll maybe say a little bit about defining what I mean by an experience, because it's one of those sort of terms that can be misused, or we can be quite loose about what we mean by it. So, so I'll define experience, and then I'll get to the nub of your question.
Perfect.
So, the best definition that I know of experience is that it is a complete representation of what it is like to be immersed in something. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's say you go to a restaurant. You could incorrectly say that the quality of how you feel about that restaurant is determined by the dinner, by the meal that you eat. And while of course the meal that you eat is important, it's not the only influence, because if the steak is beautiful, but the waiter is rude, then you're not going to have a good experience. And if the steak is beautiful and the waiter is lovely, but the temperature is bad, or the restaurant is cold, or it's poorly decorated, or it's got bad music on, you're still not going to have a good experience. So the reason that we kind of talk about experiences is because we recognize that how we feel about a restaurant or a hotel or a city or a job or an employee experience is a culmination of lots of things. And what the theory of experience design allows us to do is to look at the employee experience through those same 3 lenses. So how does it work? How does it look? How does it feel? So in the context of an employee experience, how it works is the job itself. It's the job description. It's the meaning of the role. It's the purpose of the role. It is the thing that gives the role significance. That's how it works. And that's critically important, obviously. The experience is how it looks, is the environment that you create for your team, for your employees. So it's the physical office environment, it's the ergonomics, it's all those elements. And then the third piece is design is how it feels. And that is your culture and your values and how you talk to each other and how you value colleagues, how you're treated, how well you say thank you, how well you recognize things, making sure that there's fresh coffee, making sure there's a fruit bowl, giving people flexibility, all those things are how it feels. And so the thing that connects experience design as it relates to software and experience as it relates to employees are those 3 lenses: how it works, how it looks, and how it feels. So those are how the 2 things are connected. And maybe the final thing to maybe say on that is that for me it's important to stress that whilst the how it feels bit is important, all the little things that make people feel valued, those are critically important. But the thing that you start with is the purpose piece and the significance piece. And the example that I always give in this is, if you think about modern leadership styles versus some famous leaders you'll find that there's a clash there, you know. So you think about what we understand Steve Jobs to have been like as a leader. Brutal, you know, horrific, harsh, you know. You're in his team, you know exactly what he feels, and he's not shy about telling you how he feels. Similarly, if you play football for Sir Alex Ferguson, even if you're David Beckham, you might find yourself with a football boot in the head. So what was it that allowed them to do that? Well, the thing that allowed them to do that was the level of desire within their team. So Sir Alex got away with that because what he was brilliant at was giving that team a sense of direction and purpose. Jobs was the same. He got away with the lesser characteristics of his leadership style because he imbued in Apple a sense of vision and purpose that just got everybody's blood racing, and they were so resolute in pursuing this that most of them put up with Jobs's foibles. So for me, there's a really nice balance in play there, because on the one hand, you want to make sure that people feel good, that the experience is good, and all the small things that can make that better. But those things don't replace the purpose. If you don't have a purpose that gets people's blood going, then no amount of flexible working and no amount of nice coffee and no amount of thank yous will make up for that purpose or drive piece. So that's how they're connected in my experience design world.
Yeah, definitely. And that point about like purpose and direction, we've got this theory. I mean, our methodology at the Happiness Index is based on both engagement and happiness, and that means having purpose and direction, but also having high levels of happiness. And oftentimes when you have, like you mentioned with Steve Jobs, he gave really good purpose and direction, but I wonder what the culture is like there, you know, lots of competing and working in silos.
Yeah, totally. And part of me wonders if that suited him, but that's probably a whole other, did that suit his personality style? But that's probably a discussion for another day.
Yeah, definitely. So could you explain to us, I think you gave me an example of that like using the parallel between UX and like a starter onboarding experience. So like just like a tangible kind of way that you've done it in your own organization.
Yeah, no problem. So again, I'll use a bit of the I'll use a little bit of the language of experience design, and then I'll tie it in with employees.
Yeah.
So in the world of experience design, we talk about moments of truth, and by moments of truth, what we mean are that in any experience, whether it's whether you're visiting a hotel or a restaurant or a city, or you're using software, or you're using a physical product, in any experience, there will be moments of truth. And what we mean by moments of truth are aspects of that experience which are disproportionately important. So for instance, when you go out for dinner with your partner, with your friends, even though you might be in the restaurant for, let's say, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, there are moments within those 2.5 hours which define that experience. So how you are greeted when you arrive is a moment of truth. How you get shown to your seat is a moment of truth. When your meal arrives in front of you and you look at it on the plate, is a moment of truth. Your interactions with the waiter and so on. Similarly, when you go on holidays and you arrive into the hotel, how you interact at reception is a moment of truth. But the big one that for anyone who's been involved in holiday experience design, the single biggest moment of truth in the world of holiday design is when you get the keys to your room, you open your room door and you swing open the door and you look around your room. That is the single most critical moment of truth in any holiday experience. So for people who design experiences, myself included, we're constantly asking ourselves, where are these moments that are disproportionately important in terms of how people feel they are being treated by us? And in the context of employee experience, onboarding is obviously a central part of that. People are coming to a new role, they're nervous, they're wanting to put their best foot forward, they're putting on their veneer because they want to look as good as they can. And so it's just one of those moments of truth that we can really dig into.
Yeah.
And by just really working hard to understand what matters to our employees, what their motivators are, what they're nervous about, what their blockers are, we just pausing for a moment and thinking about those things, we can design that experience again through the 3 lenses that we've talked about in such a way that we can make it as positive as possible. So that's where maybe an onboarding experience or a promotion experience or all the things that make up our professional lives, that's where they fit into that kind of experience theory book, you know.
When you mentioned that moment of truth and opening the door into your room when you're on holiday, it brought me back to I went on holiday to Mykonos with some friends, and I was in charge of booking the hotel for us. And we had opened the door up to our place, and it looked like an actual bunker, like an army bunker. Brought me back to that for a minute. The vacation was great, but yeah, that was a big moment of truth where I was like, okay. But that's so important on, you know, making people feel comfortable and actually considering putting yourself in their shoes and thinking, okay, so what could be a blocker to them when they're coming into the business? How can we make sure that they feel totally comfortable and that they right away can feel like they're part of the culture? I know that's been difficult for a lot of people with like remote onboarding as well, while we're all working virtually. Have you had to do that at all throughout this pandemic, and do like on virtual onboarding or anything like that?
Yeah, we have had someone join our planning team remotely, who joined just in January there, and it's been tough actually. It's been tough, and the reason that it's been tough is because things which are a simple conversation in an office are an email and a Zoom call and a conversation and an email document, and it's much more difficult to just get small stuff done remotely. So yeah, we have experienced that it has been tricky but manageable. It's been quite bureaucratic trying to recreate what the experience is like in an office. Yeah,
Definitely. So in your years of experience as a leader and running your own business, what have you found that, I know that there was many things that contribute to making a great employee experience. What are some of the biggest factors that you found that have contributed to that, making the best employee experience?
Well, I'm gonna stick to the experience design theory book when I answer, Rosie, and I'll mention 3 experience design principles and then how they apply to how I've done my best to lead the teams that I've been responsible for. So one of the things that is beaten into you in day one at experience design school is that you're not your user, and that you haven't earned the right to design for your user until you know them, and that is fundamental, because in the world of software, if you look at some of the worst software mistakes, they nearly always come from organizations assuming that their users are a little bit like them. And you know, we've got a saying that a big characteristic of digitally untransformed companies is that they haven't recognized just how different their users are to them. So the first principle I'm going to say is humility. So you constantly have to fight this urge to think that you know what's going on in the mind of people who are, for instance, new employees or any kind of employees. So what we try to do is we just try to make sure that we listen. And like in lockdown world, we have a weekly staff speak to everyone in their team once a week, and I get round everybody once a fortnight just with conversations, and that's on top of all the usual one-to-one and stuff like that. So we work as hard as we can to listen as well as we can. Second principle is fail early, fail forward. So don't be scared to try stuff. Recognize that some of the ideas that you have will be good and some will be bad, but isn't it better to try them, measure them, see how they're going? If they're failing, get rid of them quickly and try something else. So, you know, like we would trial new types of software. We would try new approaches to projects, and sometimes they're effective and we keep them, and sometimes they're less effective and we don't. So we do our best there. And then the third and final thing is the principle of always on optimization. And that's a simple idea that nothing is ever finished, because everything can always get better all the time. And, you know, if you look at like Jeff Bezos to this day, in his open letters every year, he talks about his fear of Amazon turning into a day 2 company. And he defines a day 2 company as one that has lost the hunger that they had on day 1 and that pursuit of improvement. So, you know, when you look at successful digital product businesses, they've got this insatiable hunger to improve all the time. They're constantly looking for data to work out where the improvements can come from. They're constantly trying new things with users. They're keeping the things which work, and they're getting rid of the things that don't. So, and I think that's the thing that just drives me, you know, that Fathom as a business can always get better all the time. And we've got that sort of mindset of what we call always on optimization. So I think those are the 3 big things, Rosie, that define how I try to lead the business and how we try to bake that employee experience into it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I guess that was all my questions I had for you today, Gareth. I really appreciate your perspective on it and bring in those parallels. I've never really thought of it in that way before. I wanted to give everybody a chance to ask questions to Gareth if you had any, or maybe say how you've kind of seen parallels like this in your own organization.
I've got loads, Rose. I've written 7 down, but if anyone else wants to go first, I don't want to hog the questions because I can annoy Gareth on WhatsApp. Gareth, just to get one going, I was so fascinated on the moments of truth bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about that? It fascinates me. It's like you just talk about it like it's normal. Can you just talk about that a little bit more? Because I think from an employee perspective, that's a really big point. So could you just expand on that a little bit, Gareth?
Yeah, no problem, Matt. So yeah, I'll just reiterate what it is, and then I'll explain how we use it. So a moment of truth is a moment in an experience which is disproportionately important, and different experiences have those different moments. So in the world of e-commerce, you've got a number of different moments of truth. You've got when the user lands on the homepage, making sure they understand what is on offer. When they search for a product in a product range, it's the quality of how those are presented. When they want to compare products, it's how that compares, and so on. But what happens is that we find that even though we talk about experiences, what we find is that experiences are made up of moments, and all moments are not created equal. So in any given experience, there's every chance that parts of that experience could be good and parts of it are bad. But by identifying moments of truth and determining how well you're doing in that moment of truth, you can specifically design to mitigate against that. And again, I'll give you some real world examples so that we know that the single biggest determining factor in when you're picking up a car hire at the airport or when you're checking into a hotel, the single biggest determining factor that will outline how you feel about that experience is the time it takes to get the keys in your hand or the time it takes to check in. So when you know that that's a moment of truth, and you know that the thing that matters most to the person experiencing that environment is its speed, well then when you know those things, you can design specifically for speed. So you know that designing emotion means designing speed. So when it comes to an employee, once you know what those things are that matter in that moment disproportionately to them, well then you can specifically design for that thing that you know will improve the experience. So that's kind of how the logic works behind it.
It's fascinating, Gareth, because we just to add on to that, we did Tony Latter did some work with Hertz, one of our clients, on the picking up the car bit, and they looked at the employee data and customer data, and it confirmed what you were saying, which is it's the moment you pick the keys up, and we managed to go in even deeper into it, which is it's even how you're greeted at that exact point. Like, are you well? Because you've basically come off a flight normally, haven't you? And you're probably at your lowest point you're going to be on a journey. And if you're given a smile, maybe a coffee, it is this huge moment of truth that makes a big difference. And one I just want to share with you from one of our investors, Tim Stoller. He was one of our clients at Lindt Chocolate. It's an amazing company. He went to leave there to work for a bread company, which we won't name. But on his first day of work, nobody knew that he was coming. And he didn't have a desk. So imagine you've left somewhere that you love. Like when you were talking, I was just imagining in like that. We're talking about a virtual world now, but it's the same moment of truth, isn't it? Like it's your first day. It's the first day at school, first day at whatever. It's a huge moment of truth, and thinking of those words, moment of truth. I think Rosie would agree. It sort of just brings it to life, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And even just thinking about those extra things that you can do. Like there's always, of course, the bare minimum that you can do and the things that you should do. But even thinking about those extra stuff, like greeting somebody with a coffee after you get off a long flight, I would love that. So just doing those extra things, especially with onboarding a new employee or bringing a new person to the company, just making sure that you're understanding where they're coming from and their emotions. I love that you talk about designing emotion too. That's just humanizing it even more, which of course that's what we're all about. But yeah.
I was also thinking about our employee experience product, Gareth, because we measure how employees feel throughout their career somewhere. But your point that not all moments are equal is huge, isn't it? because there's certain points, like Rosie's anniversary today. There was a famous Manchester City footballer where the club forgot his birthday, and so on and so on. It's made me really think about how we take insight out of the data. So that both those points were just huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And you know, the other interesting thing for me is that counterintuitively, we don't expect or even want to be happy all the time in our roles. I'll try and explain what I mean. Before everyone arrived on, Rosie was asking me how my week went, and I was giving off a bit because I'm in the middle of a big tender. And whilst I really enjoy sales, I really dislike tenders. But I just suck it up. It's my job, you know. And I'm big enough and ugly enough to just realize that it needs to be done. So if you were to ask me today how am I feeling about my job, I'd go, it flipping sucks. But that's okay. I'm, you know, it's that's fine. And there's something in that as well, that if you measure it well enough for long enough, you can begin to understand, well, you know what, I'm not feeling great today because I've got a tender deadline tomorrow, and if you next week, sorry, you know. So these for me, these are just all models to help us understand how humans work and how we can work better together.
And that's huge, isn't it? Because in that example, Gareth, if your job was 100%, if you were in a company of 100,000 people and you spent 100% of your time doing tenders, you'd probably end up leaving the company. And that's the power of trying to achieve emotional intelligence at scale. So that's such a powerful example for us. Mark Thompson, who's on here, absolutely loves tenders. So you two would be a good team.
That's good. He was saying that.
Yeah, we did talk about that at the beginning.
Thanks, though.
So Gareth, I think we'll probably wrap up there, but I did want to ask you if you had time for a magic trick.
Okay, I'll do a very quick one.
Okay.
It's just a warm up. These are better done in real life in nightclubs in the Bauhaus. That's where I specialize. But so I'm very conscious, you see, because you can see the camera. So look, I could cheat. I could just. So
I know. We're gonna
cheat.
believe anyways.
Okay, look, I'm gonna keep my hands in the thing. Okay, so this is my disappearing handkerchief. So I just put it in here like this. Watch carefully, because with no camera trickery, it just disappears.
How did you do that without a sleeve or anything? Normally they take them to the sleeve, don't they?
So that's my little virtual trick. That's my little warmer upper.
I think Rosie, I filmed that, and we can slow it down frame by frame and work it out.
Yeah, we're gonna investigate this later. Fantastic. Well, okay, thank you, Gareth. If anybody has any questions for you or would like to chat more with you, how can they get in touch with you?
I think the community on Slack is probably the best way, Rosie. I'm in there, and I can see some of the names on here. I recognize them from the community. So yeah, just on Slack, please drop me a message that way. That's probably the best way to get me.
Great, sounds good. All right, well, thanks so much, Gareth, for joining us. Thank you, everybody else, for listening in, and I will share some more details about our next session in a couple weeks' time shortly. But hope everybody has a good rest of your week and a happy weekend. Thanks.
That was amazing,
Gareth.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Take care. Bye. Bye.
Bye.